Hi, everyone, and welcome to Resource Revolution, the resource management podcast. I'm your host, Christine Robinson. On this podcast, we will discuss the real-life experiences of people in and around the world of resource management. Our guest today is Adriana Neves, Resource Manager at Norris Design. In this episode, we're going to highlight the resource management process beyond the traditional professional services setting. We really want to explore how our function is evolving in industries like architecture, engineering, construction. And Adriana, your journey in resource management is especially interesting and really offers a unique lens on how this discipline translates across different sectors. So I'm really excited to have you. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me today, Christine.
I'm excited to dive into this conversation. So let's go ahead and get started. So, like I said, you have a really unique background. You've held various roles in different operational areas earlier in your career, and now you're about 3 years into resource management. Can you walk us through that journey? What was that like, and what drew you in each step of the way?
That's a great question to start. So, what drew me every step of the way was curiosity. I own a business for a few years, I wear all the hats. That's where I really got into operations. I really like to make sure things were running smoothly. And that led me to the next one because I followed my curiosity to learn more, to get more involved. That's kind of like how it started for me. Um, Now I'm working for Norris Design, where I help identify resource needs, aligning team skills and passions with the right projects, streamline processes, which I love, and help create a more supported environment for everyone. But what I love about it is that brings the people and the process together, and this is all through my curiosity of about that.
I love that. That is so awesome. I think it's so interesting to hear that being your driving force.
Hmm.
And it's funny too because as I listen to you explain that piece and kind of describe what you're doing now, right? And I hear that interest and passion in your voice as you're describing that. That could be any resource manager, in my opinion, talking about
Hmm.
any industry, right? So it's so interesting how the profession and that driving force is really the same. So let's explore that a little bit more. Now you're in resource management. Was there anything that really surprised you now being on this side of on this side of the desk?
Yes, there was a lot of things that surprised me because it was a new role. I remember looking kind of like when I was looking at the role and I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited to dive in. One of the things that this role asks for me, it's like it takes me so much out of my comfort zone, but I also take so many folks out of their comfort zone. In a way, it's surprising, but at the same time, it's expected. But it's like surprising because it's you have to figure out how to deal with that, right? How you make it easier, not only for yourself, but for others. So I think that's one of the things that really surprised me.
I want to hear more about that. So this idea of kind of getting out of not only your comfort zone but of others. I think in my opinion, my philosophy on resource management is very much that it's not just about work, productivity, utilization. Yes, that's part of it. Yes, we measure it, right? We're trying to run a business here, but in my experience, what has been most fulfilling and most gratifying and most rewarding for me has been that understanding of the people behind those numbers and what they
Hmm.
want to do, right? What are their career aspirations? So you talk about getting them out of their comfort zone. What does that mean? What does that look like in this industry?
I absolutely love the people side and working with people, understanding how I can best support them, how a process can best support them so they can be better at their jobs and not feel overwhelmed and get the support that they need, right? So I love that part to just help people and for them to be successful whatever they're doing, right? If it's on a project, if it's at the department, it's whatever is their role is, it's like how can I best support you so you can work on the things that you want.
That's a really good perspective because in And I talk to a lot of resource managers, right? This is what I do. I seem to attract them everywhere I go, and I look for them as well, right? So in my experience, and this is across industries, this is across service lines, across levels, globally, right, in different parts of the world. One of those things that you just said, it really resonates because it is easy, it is unfortunate, but it is easy to kind of hide a little bit behind the numbers and hide between the stats. And I find that on the resource manager side, we don't even like doing that ourselves, right? But it's sometimes it just gets to that point. And hearing you say that human connection and talk about that, I love hearing that because I even can hear that, and it's exciting, right, when you do that. And I have in my experience had my best memories and my best, success moments have not been meeting the utilization target. That's sort of like, yeah, that's my job. But it's been the handwritten note that I got from someone about the opportunity that they got. It's been an individual who went and worked on a project for a year-long engagement that was her sort of dream job in a location that she was wanting to move to, right? So it's like that's the type of thing that has resonated with me. But I really think it's interesting, this idea of resource management and your role in this particular industry, because in my experience, and I think in many of our experiences, certainly through whether it be through the RMI, the Resource Management Institute, or even from a tech perspective, there's a lot of there's technology, that supports the scheduling and the staffing and the utilization and the workforce capacity projections. We tend to see resource management as a function associated mostly with law, consulting, accounting, whether that's tax or audit. What does resource management look like in your industry? Let's break it down for us.
So the my industry is very fast paced. There is a lot of external factors that can dictate the pace of the projects. So kind of like client demands, our projects go through city approval. So sometimes the city doesn't want to approve, or it's not ready, or the time is not ready, or the client is still trying to figure out the funding. I think the best answer for this is being very fluid and very dynamic, and you have to pivot a lot. And at the same time, I feel like communication, it's key to make this successful, because if the team is not in the loop of what's going on, it's very easy to get have challenge later on.
It makes a lot of sense, and I think that that's probably good advice for anyone, regardless of if they're in resource
Hmm.
management, right? You can't overstate the value of clear, concise, and translatable communication. What does I find this really fascinating, right? And I'm kind of a resource management nerd. So what you're working on the resource management process, right?
Hmm.
What does that mean? What are people being staffed on? Like what type of work are they doing?
A lot of things. So let's start with planning. So,
Okay.
planning, thinking about the big picture of what land could look like, and then going through the entitlements process, which is going through the city and make sure that project is approved. But high level, there's the physical planning side, which will be like more developing that area, what that
Okay.
area would look like. And then the entitlement piece is more about the process, going through the city approval and make sure that like everything's approval for construction. Planning also work with a lot of sub consultants. So they are overseeing the project and make sure all the consultants are doing the right thing at the same time. Then on the landscape side, they are designing all the areas that are outside the building. So it's all everything that is external. And that can be very fun because a lot of people like to design parks and streetscape and things like that, or trail design.
You walk down the street, you see a park, right? You walk down the street and probably see landscaping, all the time. But at least for me, I don't sit there and think about how it got there. I don't think about what the process was. And I translate that again from a resource management perspective because there is somebody or a group of somebodies that are doing that work, right? They're thinking it through as you're describing, they're planning it, they're working on it. So I'm curious from your standpoint in terms of the work that you're doing. I imagine, and I translate this into, let's say, the accounting world, there are certain skill sets, right? They'll come and they'll say, hey, we need someone that has revenue recognition experience. We need someone that has good project management skills, whatever it might be. Is it similar? Do you get requests for a particular skill set, let's say?
Absolutely. Sometimes they are looking for folks that have experience with a specific counting, so they are more familiar with the process. Or sometimes it's about experience with this client or a particular type of project or a project that it's very technical. So you need someone that like it's super technical about certain things, kind of like designing a pool deck on the rooftop. Or people that sometimes you just like, I just need someone that can draw. And I was like, okay, I can get that.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because again, going back to what we talked about in the beginning, it is just so similar to it's like replace the specific words, right? Replace pool deck with CECL standards, and you've got an accounting resource manager right there. So it's really interesting, and I remember, so Adriana and I had met a couple of probably years ago. I think through probably through LinkedIn, which is where we do much of our networking these days. And I remember having this conversation with you and you giving me your backgrounds, and I was like, that is so wild. I never would have known that this existed, in that industry, in that profession. So I'm curious, are there a lot of resource managers in this area? Is it prevalent? Are you kind of like a lone wolf floating around? What is it like?
I am sure I'm not a lone wolf. I haven't met that many resource managers with the title of resource managers, but that does not mean that resource management is not being done. It's just the title. Um, but It is it's rather new in the industry. I don't think it's very well recognized, unfortunately. But at the same time, I think podcasts like this and webinars that are creating more awareness about resource management, which I would hope like other firms start paying attention to and create an opportunity just like the one that I work for did.
Absolutely. No, it's a great point, and it's interesting too as you describe that, because you touched upon something that is near and dear to my heart. This idea that resource management really does exist everywhere, regardless of if you call it resource management, right? And this is something I
Hmm.
always say, and I probably am making people sick of hearing me say this because I probably say it on every episode. But it's this idea that if even if you don't have a person quote unquote called a resource manager, I promise you, resource management is happening. It might not be happening well, but it is happening, right? So someone's doing that. So no, I think that's really interesting, and I am fascinated by this. How did you land in this particular job? Did you wake up one morning and you were like, you know what? I think I really want to be a resource manager, and you looked for resource management jobs. Like, were you just looking to be in this industry? How did this happen?
So I wanted to be in the industry.
Okay.
I always loved this industry. So that was one thing. The other thing is like I was looking for roles that interested me more than anything. So I just followed my curiosity again. And when I found this role, I was like, oh my God, I love this. I love that bring the people aspect with the process because I have a very process oriented mind. So I loved that and I got super excited and it was the right time.
I love it. I love it. And not to harp on this, but I find it really interesting too whenever I spot, as I say, resource management in the wild, right? So it kind of in this new industry. I would love to understand, and maybe you know this and maybe you don't have the background, the idea that you're actually called resource manager. Is that something that your organization just came up with? Did they discover this thing called resource management and they were like, this is what we need? Is this something that you kind of co-designed? I'm just so curious how they stumbled across this title, this function.
So at Norris Design, we call RAM, Resource Allocation Manager. And this has been a role that other principals had filled before, but not full time. They knew a lot about people. People needed help, and they had like a good insight who had availability, who could help on this or that. So it evolved, but the year before I started, that's when the principals and the board decided that they needed a full time person and bring someone new to come in and really help coordinate and make things better. So it was, I guess, answer your question, it was done in a very organic way.
That is a fantastic story because one seems like it really worked out, right? So that's a positive conclusion. But the other part is this, I love to hear this. This is so frequently the story of how resource management positions are created. And again, I love hearing this because it is just in theory it is such a different industry, but in practical reality, what you just described is exactly what we've seen across the board, where you have maybe a smaller accounting firm and you've got a partner who's doing this on the side, kind of as a side hustle because he or she happens to have a little bit of time. Are they focused on it 100% of the time? No. Is it as strategic as it should be? Absolutely not. And so at a certain point, they get to that critical mass where they think, hey, you know what? We could do this better. We could do this more strategically. And I love to see that happening, right, kind of across the board. And I said, I'm a resource management nerd, but this is what lights me up. So there is a little bit of a, I believe, incorrect, but sort of story that goes along with resource management. And people will kind of hear about this and they're like, oh yeah, that's just this administrative thing, right? It's just scheduling, right? So you get told what people are doing and you basically write it down and you put it in the spreadsheet. What do you say about that? What's your thought there?
Ah, I deal with that. But it's so interesting because it has been done in such an organic way. It's knowing someone's skills, someone's experience, connecting them with the right project at the right time, right? Creating opportunities for everyone, and that's so not admin. Um, and and it's not just about that, right? It's all the process that involve that. It's bringing better tools, it's implementing best practices, and which it can help with everything. I guess you always gonna run into that, right? But I feel like when I run into those situations, what I focus on is the things that I can control. It's about like, am I explaining my vision well? Or like explaining like what I'm trying to accomplish so they can see the strategy behind. Um, and communication, good communication, so clear and effective communication of you setting expectations, how things are going to work and why they should work that way. And collaboration, right? And hopefully that over time will, you know other the folks that think that it's an admin task start seeing a different way.
First off, thank you for that. Very, very well said. I'm going to repeat one of the things that you said that I just loved. Am I explaining my vision well? Wow, that's powerful. And now a word about our sponsors, Dayshape. Do you ever feel like your team spends more time managing spreadsheets than getting actual work done? If you're a strategic leader in a professional services firm, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Say goodbye to the chaos with Dayshape. Dayshape is an AI-powered platform that takes the stress out of resource management. Imagine scheduling, planning, and staffing all being handled in one smart system that actually understands your business. Sounds too good to be true? Believe me, I dreamt of having this type of technology when I was a resource management leader. It's like having a superpower for your firm, boosting productivity, profitability, and even employee happiness. Plus, it seamlessly integrates with your existing tools, so there's zero disruption. Do you want to see the magic in action? Check out dayshape.com and see how your resource management function can be elevated to a more strategic position. Trust me, your team and your CEO will thank you. Unfortunately, very difficult in my experience for someone who is either a resource management leader or kind of on the front lines doing the resource management to recognize the importance of that. And by the way, I'm not saying I understand why that happens because you're being hit from left and right with a million different requests. And as you described in your industry, it's very dynamic. It sounds like it's a little bit volatile, right? It can change, at the drop of a hat. And because of that, yeah, you're fighting fires, right? You're not always thinking about how your philosophy on resource management is going to manifest itself. But I love that idea of, am I explaining my vision well? Because one, you should have a vision for what it is that you're doing. Otherwise, it's kind of like, what's the point, right? Otherwise, you're treating yourself as kind of an admin as well, right? So I love that idea of one, there's steps into that, right? What one, do you have a vision? What is it? Is it strategic? Because it should be. And not only that, but it's one of those things. So I'll give, I love analogies, but it's like sometimes this happens with like my husband and I. It's like I create the schedule in my head and then he's not following the schedule. And I'm like, like we're late, and it's because I didn't communicate it, right? And I get that, and I have to work on that. But the idea is, if you have this vision and people are not treating you and engaging with you in accordance with that vision, I love that accountability piece. It's like, did you communicate your vision, right? Did you tell them what it is that you're doing and how you expect the process to work and how you expect them to take certain responsibility for their part of the process? So I love that. I'll just give a little preview. I imagine that that's going to be a theme that resonates within our follow-up content of this episode, because I just think that is so interesting and quite frankly very, very strategic. So on that point, and I imagine this has a bit to do with your vision, from your perspective, what does the role of resource management, right, and the work that you are focusing on, how does that then play into the overall success of the business?
I guess what I am trying to do is help create a better environment for everyone. And if I can make for one, I can make for two, and I can make for three. And then overall, like help everybody. I do believe that the success of an organization depends on everyone. But if I can help create a better environment for everybody, um, I'm good. Then I'll be happy.
I love that idea, and having that as your driving force, really, again, in any function, if you stick to that, that comes through, right? People can tell when you're being genuine and when you're being authentic, and if that's what guides you, it comes out in your work product. That being said, in your industry, and you already talked a little bit about this. You talked about the importance of communication, which super solid advice. What are the other key ingredients for someone to be successful in resource management in your industry?
I would say supportive leadership, a supportive culture, good data, right? Less spreadsheets, uh, uh, good tools, good mentors and advisors in your corner that can help navigate and provide you the knowledge that you might not have. I have 3 years in my organization, but they have been 40 years in business. So there is a lot that I don't know. Um, and there is a lot that the leadership team is working on and working towards a vision. And you need to be able to understand some of that, right? So then you are aligned to where they want to go. So even asking, like, hey, is this in alignment with where the organization wants to go or wants to grow? It's important. Knowing the team, like I'll go back to the point, it's like really knowing the people. And that takes time, but it's really putting the effort to really know them. And I'd say collaboration again, it's key.
Oh, that's fantastic. I not only agree with all of those points, but I passionately, strongly agree with all of those points. I feel like that's the type of thing, for our listeners. If you didn't write it down, you should pause, rewind, and write that down. Those are not only not only are those key elements for the success of, quite frankly, yourself, right, in your career, but I would actually argue those are the things you should be looking for in a role, looking
Mm-hmm.
for in the culture of your organization. Those are the questions that you should be it would behoove you to ask those questions and do that digging before you agree to a job offer, right? I think
Yep.
that's so interesting. And again, it it I guess it's not surprising, but it is a little shocking how interesting, and the number of parallels that you're describing. Because again, I could have plugged in law, I could have plugged in
Hmm.
accounting or consulting, and it would have been the same thing, right? Supportive leadership, good data.
Yeah.
These are fundamental for the success of the role. So as you've navigated that. I imagine that you didn't know all those things on day one, right? As you said, you're still learning. You've been there for a couple of years. This is an industry all to itself. That's unique as well. You presumably learned things right along the way. What are some Did you have any of those light bulb moments in your journey where either yourself or perhaps leadership or others
Mhm.
really started to recognize, oh wow, this is actually an important function. This is really strategic. This is a big deal.
I think there is like there is of course a lot of light bulb moments, but I would say that right in the beginning, I did a diagram, and because I needed to make sense of what I was seeing. And because there was no diagram mapping the processes, I was like, I need to make sense of all these processes that I'm seeing and all these overlap. Started pretty straightforward. And of course, it's a mess. Like, and, but for me was a moment that it's made me see how complex this is and how intertwined maybe is the right word, that it's like connected with so many other departments and offices, and how the people are operating, how we are operating as an organization, and some of the principles that look at that diagram called the spaghetti diagram. So
I
you can see
love
there's
that.
like lines everywhere. So for me was an important moment because it helped me visualize and like put on the paper like how we were operating because we didn't have anything like this. Um, and the other part about being the realize how strategic resource management is it's the it's seeing the importance when you are bringing the right team member onto a project, onto initiatives. I also saw on projects bringing the right folks with the right skill set, with the right passion, uh, and how make it everything easier. I would say that the more that I I work on initiatives and help staff projects and bring the right people, I can see like how we are setting up a project for success. It's in the beginning and it's about bringing the right people together.
So spot on. And quite frankly, it's inspiring because it's not just, hey, you know what, I took this job, I punch in at 9, I leave at 5, here's what I do. It's very benign, right? It's kind of repetitive. I can hear the complexity. And sadly, I think it's really easy for people in this type of role to forget the value that it provides overall. So I love the idea of kind of having this visual. I would love the idea of being able to kind of close your eyes and imagine this cog in the wheel having influence in so many other areas, right? I mean, I think again in the industry that I grew up in, it did we take the time to do it? Not always, but we should have, right? And every once in a while we do this sort of back of the napkin thing, or we would do kind of a PowerPoint slide. And when we did that, it was so, as you say, it was so kind of eye opening because you looked at this and it's like, hey, you know what I do impacts campus recruiting, it impacts the hiring process, it impacts the overall workforce planning process, it impacts what we're training people to do because we have skill gaps or we don't, right? And it influences how we are looking at our business development process. I mean, it's a really big strategic thing. And so I think, look, one of my takeaways for listeners is take the time to, I don't care what industry you're in, I don't care what level you're in, what sector you are, a part of. I promise you, and you just heard it from Adriana, right? There is a visual that you can do, and it doesn't have to be fancy, right? But it could be just something that you even draw out, and it sounds like that would even be just very fulfilling to see, right? Like where you fit in and the value that you bring.
For
So
sure. And how you can fit in, right? How can you start moving things or what should take priority here? So there's a lot of values doing some diagrams.
no, I love the idea of that. Now that gives us a bit of an idea of where you started, what you've done since then, kind of how you fit in. What excites you about the future of resource management in this industry or more broadly? So because I can hear some excitement in your voice. You're not, it doesn't sound like you're done, right? It's you've got stuff that's kind of still out there. What is that? Tell us about it.
So what I'm excited about my role, I guess, there's so much room for improvement. There is. It's just like sometimes it's the timing, sometimes it's like, you know, having the energy to push forward. But there is a lot. There is a lot that I believe we can do better. Um, and I'm excited for that. I'm excited to create a better environment for everybody, for everyone. Um, on the resource management side, like more the area, like big picture, I feel like companies are being more and more aware about the value um, of the stuff that we do and we bring to the company. So I'm excited for what it can be. I think it's just going to get better. It's just going to create more awareness, podcasts like this, webinars that you are hearing more and more about capacity planning and how resource management can help scale a business. So I think there is so much good stuff coming.
And I believe in that as well. I really do. And I think that's the motivation behind these conversations. So, Adriana, we ask every guest the same two final questions at the end of the podcast. Will you share with us a mistake that you made either within this role or earlier on in your career, something that taught you something? And what did it teach you?
I think I would share something that sometimes it happens. So it's a good for me to reminder that's like I need to pay more attention to this. It's like asking the team, do you have everything in place so this person can hit the ground running? Because sometimes they just wanted to get the project covered and so they can focus on something else, but the work doesn't quite start right away. And so then I have that person that has the time that wants to do the work, but it's waiting. So that's something that I I need to ask more often.
Yeah, and it's no, I get that one. There's that saying, right? Don't make the same mistake twice, right? It's once you've gotten burned, you focus on that. And I've certainly had plenty of those in my career, and I'm not ashamed to admit them because you learn something, from each of those experiences. Next question and last question: what is the best piece of career advice that you have ever received?
I think I'm going to go back to the beginning of this podcast. Follow your curiosity.
I love that. It's exciting and it's aspirational. Awesome. Awesome way to wrap up. So Adriana, it has been so good talking with you. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And with that, we'll wrap up our conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, please help others discover our show. So follow, like, or subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Resource Revolution.